So the inauguration went off, pretty well without a hitch. It was interesting seeing it inside. I think that it made it definitely more intimate. It's too bad it wasn't outside because, this is something that I think really should be shared with as many people as possible. But of course, everyone could see it on the video feeds and everything. So, it was good that everyone could witness it. I think that overall it was, sort of what everyone expected. No major problems or anything like that. So that was good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So President Trump has promised to sign some executive orders now that he's back in office. What are those orders that we should be looking for?
Sure. Well, I think in his speech after the inauguration, he painted, a pretty good picture of what he wants to do, which seems first and foremost sort of undo the past 4 years. So I think a lot of those executive orders are going to be undoing various executive orders from Biden. We saw this when Biden came into office, when he undid a bunch of Trump's orders. Trump did it when he came into office in 2017, undoing a bunch of things that Obama had done. So, this seems to be, unfortunately, a pattern we're kind of settling into, which is every change of administration where there's a new party in power seeks to sort of spend a lot of time and energy undoing what the previous party had done. So, besides that, I think what we're going to see in these orders are definitely a crackdown on immigration. We're going to see a change in the way that some federal employees are classified, which will be interesting. I think generally we're going to see a lot of policies that Trump talked about on the campaign trail, about things like, DEI and other policies that he feels need to be rolled back or even eliminated. So we'll have to see exactly what's in there, but I would look for definitely things about immigration being the top priority because those are going to be within the purview of the president and pretty easily enacted or at least started pretty quickly.
Now, tell me about an executive order. How soon can something go into effect? Is it solely at the discretion of the president? Like once he signs it, is it good to go?
Yeah, so an executive order is something that really has in the past, say, 20 or 30 years been used more and more by presidents. It is a way for them to direct the administration, the bureaucracy of the federal government to do things in a certain way. Um, the problem is that often these orders conflict with or sometimes even contradict law, right? So these are executive orders, things that the president's saying that people in the government should do, but they are not law, right? So there's something very different. So a lot of what's going to happen is, and this has happened with Biden, with the first Trump administration, with Obama, is that when these presidential orders are given, lots of times lawsuits are filed, people object to them. And so these are not sort of automatic, no questions asked, right? They will be fought in the courts. They'll be fought by Congress, perhaps, probably not this Congress. But yeah, they can go into effect immediately. They can go into effect today. He is president, and when he gives an order as president, that order is in effect as soon as he gives it. So that's why I'm saying some of these things like immigration policy, rounding up or arresting people here illegally, that can happen as soon as humanly possible.
So to make sure I've got this correct, it could technically happen immediately, but then once it starts happening, someone could come in with a lawsuit and say, "Hey, we need to put a hold on this."
Sure, right. So people who might be affected by these orders might ask the court to issue a stay. That is, a court, either the appeals court, a circuit court, or eventually the Supreme Court could say, that presidential order is unconstitutional or it conflicts with existing law and therefore should not be enacted. Like I said, this has happened a lot of times with a lot of executive orders. The question is, do the courts interrupt or interfere with what is going on? Do they let it go on while the case is being heard? These are decisions that the courts will have to make. And of course, the Trump administration can appeal these court decisions all the way up to the Supreme Court. And so we'll see a lot of back and forth. I mean, in some ways, whatever Trump is doing today or the next couple of weeks, he is for sure making a lot of work for the lawyers of the United States. That's for sure.
Yeah, they'll be busy. Um, are there any things that you expect? I know you mentioned like immigration, any executive orders that you really expect to see more pushback than others?
Um, you know, that's interesting because from what I'm reading about and looking into, the one thing that is probably going to get immediate pushback are changing the ways that federal employees are classified, which sounds a little sort of wonky and inside baseball, but really what he is talking about is changing federal employees from being protected and not sort of at the whim of the president and being reclassified as being able to be dismissed by the president based on sort of his needs or their needs. That evidently is something that various federal unions and federal organizations are planning to sue on pretty quickly. Other things like immigration, part of the problem with suing or trying to stop these is you have to show that you have what's called standing, that you're going to be harmed by it in some way, and that you are able to bring a case to the courts. So, sometimes when you're talking about non-citizens, that becomes a bit more difficult. So, but like I said, I would imagine most of these orders, there's going to be somebody affected by it who's going to say, I want this order stopped. And so that's going to be interesting to see how many of these orders actually do take effect, and how many of them are stopped.
Is there a number, like an amount that he's promised to sign right now, or is that not out there?
Yeah, no, so I've heard the number 100. So I don't know if that means there are exactly 100, or if that's just a ballpark figure. Sometimes we know that Trump likes to speak in hyperbole, so I don't know. I would imagine there's going to be a fair number. It could easily be 100 or more because of all the things he sort of promised to do and all the various things, we heard today, some of these things. And some of those orders, could be round people up immediately. Some of these orders could be, we need to look into what's happening in Panama. We have to set up a commission to investigate how we annex Greenland, or some of these things that are not going to take effect right away, that they're going to, set up things or put into motion things that might take weeks, months, or years to actually unfold. So some of these things we'll see right away. People get very sort of exercised or excited about them. Others, it could be, very sort of low key, not terribly exciting things that are going to take a while to have an impact.
All right, so let's talk about now former President Biden. He made some final pardons before leaving the White House. Can you break those down for us?
Yeah, yesterday and today, not surprisingly, he made some last minute pardons. The first group of people were people like Liz Cheney, people who served on the January 6th commission, some of whom have accepted the pardon, some of whom have yet to do so. This was in part due to a lot of talk from President Trump himself, but also a lot of his cabinet picks and supporters who felt that they were going to try to prosecute or somehow go after those people on the January 6th committee. I think that it's unfortunate that these pardons were issued, but I think from the perspective of Biden and the people involved, they felt that they were at risk. I mean, certainly they had been told they're at risk. So whether or not Trump was serious, whether or not Trump would have done it, this was obviously a preemptive measure. Now, the pardons today for Biden's family seem a little bit more obscure. I think he just wanted to kind of have an airtight case where members of his family weren't going to be dragged into some political trial that would have, tried to score some political points. Those are a little less obvious. I don't recall Trump targeting specific members of Biden's family aside from Hunter Biden. But I think in general, Biden wants to protect the people around him from possible persecution. It does send a chilling message. Look, I think in the executive orders that we see today from Trump, there might be some pardons. People have been expecting pardons for the people who participated in the January 6th event. So, and it's hard to sort of argue against those when, pardons have been issued by Biden. But, Biden can claim that he issued those because of threats from Trump. So it's this kind of vicious circle that goes around and around.
Now, can you explain the power that a presidential pardon has? What exactly does that mean?
So typical presidential pardons are usually aimed at people who have served their time and who have been accused or they have, sorry, I got to start over. What is the word? Oh my God. Convicted. Thank you. Okay. So normally and sort of typical presidential pardons are aimed at people who have served their time. They've been convicted of a crime, but served their time. And the pardon often sort of erases that conviction or overturns it and somehow sort of exonerates the person. But often that person has already sort of paid that price. In presidential history, the only sort of other example I can think of is Gerald Ford pardoning Richard Nixon, who was on the precipice of being charged with some crimes committed during his presidency. Normally, these pardons are aimed at sort of clearing the records of people, maybe righting wrongs that had been done. One of the pardons that Biden issued was for Marcus Garvey, who was very active in African American civil rights in the 1920s and 30s. So that is something that at this point was almost 100 years ago. So not, Marcus Garvey is not alive. The difference is that these pardons are for people who, in some cases, have not been accused of crimes yet. Presidential pardons are absolute. They are you can't appeal them. You can't go to court to overturn them, based on the Constitution. So in these preemptive pardons, it appears that now these people are untouchable by the U.S. justice system for crimes or problems that they may have committed already. Now, of course, if they do something in the future, these pardons should not and do not cover that.
Perfect. Let's see. Okay. What do you feel President Biden's legacy will be years down the road?
That's going to be an interesting one. I think part of it depends on how much Trump is able to undo or wants to undo. There are some things that Biden did, for example, with his major legislation early in his term that really set up a lot of government spending in technology fields and chip manufacturing, things like that. If allowed to stand, those are going to have consequence down the road where it will help the United States be a leader in those fields and maintain control of the manufacturing of things like computer chips, which I think is very important. A lot of the infrastructure repairs that Biden has done will go forward and be completed. Now, when people are thinking about all the great things that a president has done, setting up a chip manufacturing plant in Arizona or fixing a bridge is not usually going to come to mind. So I think in some ways his legacy will, in the near term and the short term, probably be not that great. In the long term, if those economic investments pay off, maybe people will kind of revise their idea of how successful a president he has been. But in the short term, look, he only had 4 years. He was not able to have 8 years, and he was not able to get somebody else in that would have continued his work. So really, I think that his impact in the short term is going to be minimal.
Perfect. Is there anything else that you would like to bring up or that you think we need to mention?
Uh, nope, I think we're good.
Hey, thanks for watching. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch more videos from ABC 13 WSET.